U.S. President Barack Obama is known as one of the world's most exciting political speakers. But not even he can whip up the same high level of enthusiasm and fervor when talking about rather humdrum subjects. Now, these settings are much less intense than campaign rallies or victory addresses, and when you've heard the chief executive speak hundreds of times over the last 8 years, first as a Senate colleague, then as a White House rival, and finally as your boss, it might be even more difficult to offer him undivided attention on each and every occasion, especially while trying to stave off jet lag at the same moment. And that's what appears to have happened to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton during Obama's address in Myanmar. The cameras caught America's top diplomat seeming to doze off while topics like trade and cooperation were discussed. She plans to leave her position in 2013, but maybe it's never too early to catch up on lost rest. Let's take a look at what Weibo users had to say.
She is a pretty busy woman. I'd probably fall asleep too, especially if she'd just finished a meal. I wonder if Obama saw her. I'm sure he did, since she's sitting in the front row. Look at Aung San Suu Kyi beside her. She looks more like a leader than Hillary does.
Obama and Clinton have been on a foreign trip aimed at reaffirming ties between the U.S. and Thailand, reaching out to Myanmar as the country enacts unprecedented reforms, and attending a summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations in Cambodia. MSN wrote that when you're seriously jet-lagged, you reach a point when no amount of coffee or Red Bull can help. And Hillary Clinton looked like she hit that wall smack in the middle of President Obama's speech. Now, the accompanying video quickly went viral, and clips on multiple sites all over the internet have generated millions of hits in just a few days. Clinton was also seated next to the host country's global icon and Nobel Peace Prize winner Aung San Suu Kyi at the time. Now, as the Inquisitor website points out, maybe you can't get to a point where so many amazing things happen to you with such regularity that it all sort of becomes mundane. Now, user comments reported by the Examiner went even further. One person posted, "What do you mean? During an Obama speech is the best time to fall asleep." Another added, "Apparently, nobody who voted for Obama listens to a word he says, or they wouldn't have voted for him." Now, Dustin Carlson of the Inquisitor had his own take, writing, "If you love President Obama, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you can't stand him, you also know what I'm talking about." Now, most of us find ourselves laughing at his jokes, smiling at his charm, and feeling pretty happy after he talks, even if, upon reflection, we find that we disagree with almost everything he said. Well, that is quite the talent for the Commander-in-Chief to possess. But jet lag is an indefeatable enemy that even the smoothest of voices would be hard-pressed to overcome. It's also not the first time one of his key allies has drifted off during a high-profile address. Vice President Joe Biden appeared to be napping as his boss laid out a set of budget proposals in April of 2011. And some respondents think drifting at such times is quite rude. But first of all, let's take a look at the video and then what people had to say.
It says that 10 years from now, if you're a 65-year-old who's eligible for Medicare, you should have to pay nearly $6,400 more than you would today. It says instead of guaranteed health care, you will get a voucher. And if that voucher isn't worth enough to buy...
I would have expected more from the Secretary of State. One little mistake is all it takes. Now the whole world sees it.
America is not the only nation where dignitaries occasionally catch 40 winks while issues of domestic and worldwide importance are being addressed. Now, while retiring Chinese President Hu Jintao was opening the recent CPC Congress in Beijing with a 100-minute speech, at least one delegate was spotted yawning in the midst. Now, several other attendees looked to be nodding off as the obligatory panels and meetings continued through the next week, while more than a few were observed fiddling with their smartphones. Members of the military band took a little time to enjoy their own version of a siesta during a plenary session in Shanghai as well. And of course, many responses on Weibo are quick to say that China is a country of meetings. The basic feeling is that leaders love to speak and work units love to hold long conferences. Let's take a look at a few comments on Weibo.
I've seen worse in Chinese meetings. Obama's speech must be pretty boring, just like how Chinese meetings are usually very boring. It puts people to sleep. You can't help it. Chinese meetings are the worst. The leader speaks, but there is very little content and nothing is changed after the meeting. I feel like sleeping through them too.
Maybe the simple lesson we can take away from these examples is that political addresses are quite boring, and a couple of people falling asleep during their delivery is probably inevitable. Of course, the U.S. Secretary of State snoozing while the president is speaking overseas is easy fodder for sensationalistic headlines, especially when supporters of the opposition party have no love lost for either individual. Now, if it's any consolation, though, the Blaze noted that Clinton looked engaged but blinky by the end of Obama's address. She most likely won't have much time to relax during her final few months on the job, with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict flaring up in explosive fashion once again, and other unforeseen challenges surely over the horizon for the current top diplomat as well as her eventual successor. International relations, never a dull moment.